The rain had left its mark on the city. Puddles clung stubbornly to the cracks in the pavement, street lamps shimmered with fractured halos, and the air carried the faint metallic scent of storms past. But for all its cleansing, the world had not been made new. Shadows lingered not in the sky, but in whispers. In our last chapter, the whispers had found form. A shaky clip filmed inside Velour Café captured Adrian Blackwood's confrontation with the mysterious woman in burgundy. By morning, it had spread across news feeds, gathering comments, speculations, and accusations like a fire gathering smoke. And in the background of that clip, barely visible yet unmistakable, stood Anna, a waitress who had never asked to be part of anyone's story, let alone his. It was only their second meeting, yet already her face had been swept into a scandal not her own. Now, as we begin again, the question lingers: what happens when fate insists on crossing paths a third time? Before we step into the quiet glow of Velour Café, a gentle reminder: if you've been following Adrian and Anna's story, if you find yourself drawn into the drama of secrets, betrayals, and fleeting moments of closeness, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe lies ahead for them? Your voice shapes the journey, and your presence keeps these stories alive. Now let us open the door once more. The evening shift had always been Anna's favorite. Velour Café transformed at night. The golden lights above cast softer halos. The bustle of morning and midday gave way to hushed conversations, and the air was filled less with urgency and more with a kind of quiet reflection. Students studied in corners, couples lingered over dessert, and the occasional solitary figure found solace in the hum of the espresso machine. For Anna, it meant fewer trays clattering, fewer impatient orders, and more space to breathe. Normally, she cherished it. Tonight, however, she felt the weight of unseen eyes even before the door opened. She moved carefully between tables, setting down cups of steaming coffee, her posture straight, her face composed. But beneath her calm was the restless memory of the clip. Friends had sent it to her with wide-eyed emojis and teasing comments. Strangers online had speculated about the waitress in the background, asking if she too was involved. It was ridiculous, she told herself. Just noise, nothing more. And yet it pressed against her ribs like a stone she could not dislodge. She wiped the counter for the third time, though it was already spotless when the doorbell chimed. Her heart dipped instantly. Adrian Blackwood stepped inside. He was as precise as ever. Black suit, immaculate posture, tall expression, unreadable. But tonight, something in him looked different. The storm had left its trace not in his clothes, but in his eyes. They were darker, somehow heavier. The cafe grew quieter. Several heads turned discreetly, phones shifting on tables. People had seen the clip. They knew the name. Now here he was, not on their screens, but in flesh. Anna's jaw tightened. She turned away quickly as though the sight of him were no more than a distraction, but her chest betrayed her calm, rising and falling with unsteady rhythm. He chose a table near the back, away from the windows, away from the light. He did not look at her, not at first. Instead, he set his phone face down, folded his hands neatly, and sat with the stillness of someone waiting, not for service, but for judgment. Anna forced herself forward, notepad in hand. "What will it be tonight?" she asked, her tone crisp, devoid of warmth. The same Adrian replied. His voice was low, steady, but lacked the edge of arrogance she had come to expect. It was almost weary. She scribbled quickly and turned away, refusing to linger. As she prepared his drink, she heard it, the murmurs low but distinct. "That's him. The one from the video. Who's the woman? Do you think he'll see her again?" Anna bit her lip hard. She told herself she didn't care. She told herself their words had nothing to do with her. And yet she knew how quickly curiosity could shift. She had been in that clip too. Her face blurred but present. Her life dragged quietly into the storm. She set the cup on his saucer with a firm hand, the porcelain clinking lightly. He glanced up, eyes catching hers. For a moment neither spoke. Then softly he said, "You've seen it." Her chest tightened. Everyone has. He studied her for a heartbeat longer, then nodded once, as though that answer alone carried volumes. The cafe door opened again. Anna's shoulders tensed instinctively. It wasn't her. Not yet. Just a group of students laughing, shaking rain from their jackets. Relief washed over her, but only briefly. Because if the past two encounters had taught her anything, it was that storms never stayed outside for long. She glanced at Adrian sitting in the pool of golden light at his table. He looked composed, but there was something in the set of his shoulders that betrayed expectation. He was waiting not for his drink, not for peace, but for the next inevitable strike. And, somehow, Anna realized so was she. The golden glow of Velour Café usually softened everything. The scratches on the wood, the tension in the air, the small mistakes that came with a long shift. But tonight, the light felt different. It revealed more than it concealed. Anna could feel it even before the whispers began. Customers looked longer than they should have, their gazes drifting not toward the menu boards or the display case of pastries, but toward the back corner where Adrian Blackwood sat. His presence alone shifted the rhythm of the room. Where normally spoons clinked casually against porcelain, they now paused mid-stir. Where conversations used to blend into a gentle hum, they now dipped and swelled in odd rhythms punctuated by glances, by half-formed sentences that always ended with his name. At one table near the window, two young women leaned close, their voices hushed, but not nearly enough. "That's him, I swear. The billionaire. You saw the video, right?" Her friend nodded eagerly, eyes flicking toward Adrian before darting back down to her cup. "It's everywhere. My feed's full of it. Him and that woman. What do you think it means?" The first woman shrugged, feigning nonchalance, though her eyes shone with curiosity. "An affair. A deal gone wrong. Honestly, does it matter? He's guilty of something, that's for sure. Look at him." Their laughter was nervous, sharp, quickly swallowed when Adrian's gaze lifted briefly toward them. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was enough to silence them. At another table, a man in his 40s shook his head over his phone, scrolling through the comments section beneath the viral clip. "Pathetic," he muttered to his companion. "Men like that always think they're untouchable until the truth comes out." The companion raised a brow. "What truth? Nobody even knows what the woman was talking about." "Doesn't matter. You saw his face." Silence is admission. Anna's chest tightened as she set down a tray nearby. The words slid into her ears, uninvited, unwanted. She told herself to ignore them, to treat them like background noise. But they clung stubbornly, echoing louder than the rain tapping against the glass. When she returned to the counter, she noticed a group of students who had just come in, their damp jackets strewn across the backs of chairs. One of them pulled out his phone, smirking as he angled the screen for his friends to see. The shaky video of yesterday's confrontation played again, and they all leaned in. Anna's pulse quickened when she saw herself in the background. Even blurred, even incidental, she knew it was her. She hated it, the exposure, the vulnerability, the way strangers now felt entitled to peer into her life without permission. She busied herself at the espresso machine, focusing on the hiss of steam, the clatter of metal, anything to drown the whispers. But she couldn't avoid it forever. A voice spoke directly to her as she passed a table near the center. "Excuse me," a young man said, his tone polite but laced with curiosity. He was seated with two friends, a half-finished cappuccino before him. Anna stopped tray balanced carefully in her hands. "Yes, you work here, right?" he asked. Her brows knit. "Obviously." The young man smiled, undeterred. "So, what's the story with him?" He gestured casually toward the back where Adrian sat. "The video's everywhere. You must have seen it up close." "Is it true?" Anna froze. For a moment, the cafe seemed to go quieter, as though the very air leaned in to hear her answer. Her grip on the tray tightened. Heat rose to her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger. "I serve coffee," she said sharply. "That's the story." The young man blinked, taken aback by the edge in her voice. His friends exchanged glances, murmuring something she couldn't catch. Anna turned, quickly retreating toward the counter before her composure could crack further. Behind her, she felt his eyes, Adrian's. She glanced once over her shoulder just to confirm. He was watching her, though, not with arrogance, not with disdain. His gaze was unreadable, steady, heavy with something that unsettled her. She hated it. Hated that he could sit there calm and composed while she was the one being dragged into conversations she never invited. She set the tray down with a thud, the cups rattling faintly. Her coworker gave her a questioning look, but she ignored it, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped the counter. Adrian remained silent at his table, his posture impeccable, his stillness almost unnatural. But silence did not mean absence. Silence meant presence amplified. Every customer felt it. Every whisper acknowledged it. And Anna, caught between irritation and unease, realized something she did not want to admit. This was not going to end here. The storm might have left the streets outside, but inside Velour Café, it was only beginning to gather strength again. The cafe had grown heavier with whispers. Conversations no longer flowed freely. They bent, curved, and circled like moths around a single flame. And at the center of it sat Adrian Blackwood, silent, composed the calm eye of a storm no one could ignore. Anna stood at the counter, her hand steadying a saucer, though her heart was restless. The hiss of steam filled the air as she prepared another cup, his cup. Every motion was precise, mechanical, yet her thoughts betrayed her composure. Why does he keep coming back? Why this place? Why me? The porcelain rattled softly as she set the cup down, annoyed at herself for caring even enough to ask. When she carried it across the floor, the room seemed to quiet, as though every gaze followed the tray in her hands. She hated that awareness, hated that his presence turned her work into a performance. She reached his table, placing the drink before him with careful control. "Your order," she said flatly. Her voice carried no trace of warmth, no hint of politeness beyond necessity. It was a shield, and she wielded it like armor. Adrian lifted his gaze to hers, slow and deliberate. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, "You believe them." The words were not a question. They were an observation laid bare between them. Anna stiffened. "I don't believe anything. I just serve coffee." Adrian's lips curved faintly. Not quite a smile, not quite a sneer. That's safer, to stand aside, to say nothing. To let others decide what's true. Her jaw tightened. "Isn't that what you do? Sit in silence, let rumors spread, let people wonder if you hate the whispers so much. Why don't you speak up? Why don't you prove them wrong?" The room seemed to lean in ears, straining, though no one dared look directly. The golden light above flickered slightly, as though echoing the tension at their table. Adrian studied her carefully, his expression unreadable, because truth is rarely what people want. They prefer the story. They prefer... His gaze swept briefly across the room at the phones tilted in half-hidden angles, at the eager eyes pretending not to watch. The spectacle. Anna's chest tightened. His voice was calm, but beneath it she sensed exhaustion, a bitterness sharpened by years of repetition. Still, she refused to soften. "Maybe they prefer it because that's all you give them," she said, her words cutting clean. Silence. Distance. Arrogance. People believe what they see, and what they see is a man who carries scandal like a shadow. The words struck harder than she intended, hanging in the space between them. For a brief moment, Adrian's eyes flickered. Not anger, not pride, but something else. Something she could not name. Then it was gone, buried beneath the cold mask again. He lifted the cup, sipped slowly, set it down with deliberate calm. Perhaps he said simply. The single word carried weight, as though he had chosen not to argue, not to defend, but to accept. Or perhaps to retreat into silence once more. Anna turned sharply, unwilling to linger. She walked back toward the counter, her steps brisk, her breath shallow. But even as she moved away, she felt the weight of his gaze. Not domineering, not invasive, just steady, unyielding, impossible to ignore. Around them, the cafe's atmosphere shifted. Customers had grown bolder, their whispers less concealed. "That's her." She talked to him. "Do you think she knows something?" She looked angry. "Maybe she's part of it." Anna clenched her fists behind the counter, her nails digging into her palms. She hated it, being drawn in, being noticed, being speculated about. All because of him. She busied herself with refilling sugar jars, wiping the same spotless surface again and again, but nothing drowned out the noise. Adrian remained still at his table. He did not rise to the whispers, did not react to the phones, did not defend himself. His silence, once arrogance to her eyes, now looked different, like armor too heavy to remove. For the first time, Anna wondered if silence itself was his cage. But the thought was fleeting, dismissed as quickly as it arrived. She forced herself back into routine, though her chest ached with the tension of unspoken words. The cafe clock ticked louder than usual. Rain tapped faintly against the windows, though the storm had passed. The world outside looked calm again, but inside Velour Café, the air was thick, expectant. Anna knew it would not last. She had seen it twice before the door, opening the storm, walking in, the balance tipping without warning. And, as she glanced toward the entrance now, she felt it that same pull, that same inevitability. The story was far from over. The cafe door opened with a chime that seemed louder than usual. Conversations faltered, forks paused midair, and every head turned instinctively toward the entrance. Anna froze where she stood behind the counter, her heart sinking even before her eyes confirmed it. The woman had returned. She stepped inside with unhurried grace, her burgundy dress clinging to the glow of the cafe lights, her heels striking the wood with sharp precision. She did not pause at the counter, nor at any empty table. Her eyes found Adrian immediately, as if there had never been a question of where she was headed. Without hesitation, she crossed the floor and sat down opposite him. A ripple moved through the room. Phones lifted discreetly angled just so. The air thickened with curiosity, anticipation, the silent thrill of witnessing something forbidden. Anna's chest tightened. She wanted to look away, to force herself into the safety of routine, but her body betrayed her. She was as caught as the rest of them, drawn into the gravity of the unfolding scene. Adrian did not move at first. He sat back, composed, his hands folded neatly before him. Only the faint tightening of his jaw betrayed the weight of her presence. "You're persistent," he said at last, his voice low, steady. The woman's lips curved faintly. "Persistence is what you owe me, Adrian." The words landed heavy, laced with something more than casual disdain. They carried the weight of history. Anna busied herself with wiping a spotless counter, though her ears strained toward every word. "What do you want?" Adrian asked, his tone controlled. "What I've always wanted," the woman replied smoothly. "Answers, closure, and perhaps a reminder that debts, no matter how carefully hidden, have a way of resurfacing." Her voice was calm, but beneath it lay steel. A group of students leaned closer to one another, whispering furiously. "Did you hear that debt's financial scandal I told you? Who is she? An ex, a partner, maybe both." Their phones were out now, cameras recording under the guise of casualness. Anna's stomach knotted. She hated the intrusion, hated the spectacle, yet she did not intervene. She could not. This was larger than her, larger than the cafe itself. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his voice sharp but quiet. "This isn't the place." The woman tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "Isn't it? Look around you, Adrian. A cozy little cafe, a captivated audience, a perfect stage. Don't you see you were never meant to hide? You were meant to be exposed." Her words carried across the room, subtle but loud enough for everyone to hear. Anna felt the atmosphere shift, no longer whispers, but open speculation, eager and shameless. Adrian's eyes flicked once across the cafe, at the recording phones, at the curious stares. For a moment, his composure wavered. He looked not like the untouchable CEO, but like a man cornered. Then the mask returned. "You've said enough," he replied firmly. But the woman leaned back, unfazed. "Oh, I haven't even begun." She sipped her drink. She had ordered nothing, but someone had already placed a glass of water in front of her, perhaps in fear, perhaps in reflex. Her hand was steady, her movements deliberate. She was in control, and she knew it. Anna's pulse quickened. She should walk away, focus on her duties, pretend this was none of her concern. Yet her eyes remained fixed on the scene, her breath shallow. For a fleeting second, Adrian's gaze lifted and caught hers across the room. His eyes held no arrogance, no command, only a fleeting plea. She looked away immediately, angry at herself for even acknowledging it. The woman's voice rose again, slicing through the murmurs. "How long do you think you can keep running? The empire you built on shadows, the deals signed in silence. Do you really believe they'll stay buried?" The cafe erupted in whispers. "Empire deals? Is she talking about fraud? This is insane. We're watching a billionaire fall apart." Phones clicked, flashes blinked, and Anna felt her world shrinking. She was trapped in the eye of a storm she had never chosen. Adrian exhaled slowly, his patience fraying. "Leave," he said, his tone sharpened, colder now. The woman only smiled, slow and deliberate. "I will. But remember this, every silence is a confession. And you've been silent for far too long." With that, she rose, adjusting her coat heels, striking sharply as she made her way toward the door. She left as suddenly as she had entered, her silhouette, swallowed by the dark beyond the glass. The cafe buzzed, instantly louder than ever. Customers leaned across tables, voices spilling with speculation, excitement, judgment. The air was thick with it, impossible to ignore. Anna gripped the counter hard, her knuckles white. Her chest was tight with anger, fear, and something she refused to name. Adrian sat motionless at his table, his composure fragile, the weight of dozens of eyes pressing down on him. And, in the midst of it all, Anna realized the truth she had been avoiding. Whatever storm he carried, it was now inside these walls. And no matter how hard she tried, she was already caught in it. The cafe did not recover after she left. If anything, her absence made the room louder, the tension sharper. It was as though the air itself had been charged, and now sparks leapt from table to table, voice to voice. Anna tried to focus on her tasks, clearing cups, wiping down counters, but the noise was impossible to ignore. Every whisper carried fragments of the confrontation twisted and reshaped into something darker. Debts, empire built on shadows. She knows everything. He looked guilty, didn't he? And, through it all, Adrian sat at his table a still figure in a storm of speculation. Then the inevitable happened. A young man near the center of the room tilted his phone upright, the red circle of a live stream glowing on the screen. "Guys, look," he whispered to his friends, though his voice carried easily in the hush. "You're not going to believe this, Adrian Blackwood, right here. After that video yesterday." The camera panned across the cafe, catching Adrian at his table, his face half lit in golden light, eyes unreadable. The feed filled instantly with Hart's comments scrolling so fast, the boy's grin widened. "Yeah, that's him," he said to the screen. "You've all seen the clip. He's back again. Same cafe." Can you believe it? Anna's stomach dropped. She turned quickly, but it was too late. The camera had swept past the counter, past her, catching her profile in clear view. The comments lit up. "Wait, isn't that the same waitress from the viral video? She's always there. She knows something. Maybe she's involved. Maybe that's why he keeps coming back." Anna's cheeks burned, her hands tightening around the tray she carried. She wanted to shout, to snatch the phone, to demand they stop. But her throat locked her pride, anchoring her to silence. She was no longer just a bystander. She was part of the story now, whether she wanted it or not. At the back, Adrian's eyes lifted following the arc of the camera until they landed on her. For a moment, his expression softened, no longer cold, no longer unreadable. It was something closer to regret. Anna looked away, instantly furious, not just at the customers, not just at the strangers online, but at him. Because no matter how carefully she had avoided his orbit, his presence had dragged her in anyway. The live streamer leaned closer to his screen, his voice animated. "Do you guys see her? The waitress. That's her, the one from yesterday's video. She was in the background right there when it all happened. Look at her face, she looks nervous. Bet she knows more than she's saying." His friends chuckled, one elbowing the other. "Ask her a question. Go on, ask her." Anna slammed the tray down on the counter harder than she meant to, the sharp sound jolting several customers. She turned her back, forcing herself to breathe, forcing herself not to explode. But inside she was burning. This cafe had always been her refuge, her sanctuary. Now it was a stage, and she was an unwilling actor under lights she had never asked for. The humiliation cut deeper than anger. It felt like betrayal by fate, by chance, by the man whose shadow loomed over everything. She glanced once more toward Adrian. He had not moved. He sat perfectly still, but his eyes, they were on her. Not proud, not defensive, but heavy with something she had no name for. The comments kept coming, though she could not hear them. She imagined the words, scrolling strangers dissecting her life in real time, assigning her roles she had never chosen, mistress, accomplice, witness. Her fists clenched at her sides. She wanted to scream, "I'm none of those things. I'm just a waitress." But she stayed silent, the noise around her louder than any protest could ever be. Adrian finally moved. He rose slowly, the scrape of his chair cutting through the murmurs. The cafe hushed instantly, every phone angling toward him, every breath caught in waiting. But he didn't speak. He simply straightened his jacket, adjusted his cufflinks, and sat back down again. The message was clear silence. Always silence. For him, it was armor. For Anna, it was suffocating. She turned away, refusing to meet his gaze again. The cafe clock ticked loudly, the sound almost mocking. Outside, the rain had returned light at first, then heavier. Thunder rolled distantly, a reminder that storms never truly left. They lingered, waiting for the moment to break again. Anna wiped the counter for the 5th time, her hands trembling. She whispered to herself, barely audible, "I don't belong in this." But already she knew it was too late. The live stream ended suddenly, the boy muttering something about saving the video to post later. Laughter erupted at his table, casual, careless, cruel in its thoughtlessness. Anna clenched her jaw, forcing herself not to react. Yet in her chest, dread coiled tighter. If yesterday's clip had spread like fire, what would a live stream do? By tomorrow, she might not just be a blurred face in the background. She might be the story. At that thought, the cafe lights flickered once, then again, and with a sudden snap, the room fell into darkness. Gasps rippled, followed by the frantic glow of phone screens lighting up the black. Thunder growled louder, closer, the rain slamming against the windows with renewed fury. Anna's breath caught in the pitch black. And, somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered low, deliberate, close enough to hear, "Not everything is as it seems." Her heart raced. She couldn't tell if it was Adrian or someone else. The cafe gasped as one. The lights snapped out, plunging the room into instant blackness. For a heartbeat, there was silence, not the comfortable kind, but the jagged, breathless kind that precedes panic. Then came the sounds, chairs scraping silverware, clattering, the rush of voices overlapping in confusion. The storm outside seemed to roar louder thunder, rattling the glass panes, rain slamming against the windows like fists. Anna's heart pounded. She stood frozen behind the counter, her breath, shallow eyes straining against the dark. The golden warmth that had always made Velour Café a sanctuary was gone. Now it was just shadows, restless and alive. Light returned in fragments, not from the ceiling lamps, but from dozens of phones raised instinctively. Screens glowed ghostly blue, their beams slicing through the black. Customers held them like candles in a cathedral of chaos, their faces lit in eerie half-shadows. The whispers grew frantic. "Is this part of it? First the woman, now this. Keep recording, keep recording. Don't stop." Anna's pulse quickened. Even in the dark, they would not stop. They filmed everything as though the absence of light only sharpened their hunger. She moved cautiously from behind the counter, her hand brushing against familiar surfaces. The clink of cups beneath her touch grounded her, though the world around felt foreign. Then she saw it. A shape. Near the back, where Adrian's table sat, a darker shadow among shadows. Her eyes strained against the dim light of nearby phones. Burgundy. Even in the fractured glow, she recognized it. The dress, the posture, the unmistakable poise. The woman, standing too close to him. Anna's breath caught. She wanted to shout to warn, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she watched as the silhouette leaned closer, her outline sharp against the dim glow. Adrian did not move. From where Anna stood, she could just make out his figure, tall and composed, even in the dark. His stillness unsettled her. Not fear, not surprise, but something else. Resignation. The woman's voice slipped through the dark low, but clear enough for those closest to hear. "You can't escape the dark, Adrian. Not here. Not anywhere." The words sliced the air, chilling even those who did not understand. Phones lifted higher, capturing fragments, pixels struggling against shadow. Anna's chest tightened. She hated herself for leaning closer, for letting curiosity drag her toward danger. Her feet moved almost against her will, carrying her nearer to the edge of the counter, nearer to the truth she didn't want, but couldn't resist. A glass shattered somewhere in the room. A customer screamed. The panic rose like a wave, pulling everyone with it. "Calm down," someone shouted, but no one listened. The cafe was a storm within a storm. And, through it all, Adrian finally moved. His silhouette shifted, rising to his full height, his presence filling the space even without light. Enough, his voice cut through, low but commanding. For a brief second, silence returned. Even the storm outside seemed to hush as though listening. The woman in burgundy tilted her head, her smile invisible but felt. "You think you can silence this?" she whispered. "Even the dark speaks louder than you." And then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she melted back into shadow. Anna blinked her eyes, darting frantically. The phones swung around their beams, catching nothing but empty chairs, glistening puddles of water tracked in from the storm, and faces pale with fear. The woman was gone. Again. A sudden crack of thunder shook the windows, drawing cries from the crowd. One customer stumbled, slipping on the wet floor near the entrance. Another tripped over an abandoned chair. The room erupted into chaos. Once more, voices rising, panic thick. Anna rushed forward instinctively, but before she could move far, someone else did. Adrian. His shadow cut across the glow of the phones, moving swiftly, decisively. For an instant, Anna caught her breath. He was not untouchable now, not cold, not distant. He was present, moving through the dark with an urgency that contradicted his usual control. Still, the panic did not ease. Customers shoved past one another, desperate for light, for safety. The door banged open as someone fled into the storm, letting wind and rain lash across the floor. Anna braced herself against a table, her breath ragged. She could barely think, barely breathe. The memory of the burgundy silhouette still clung to her vision, imprinted against the dark. Had it been real, or just her imagination fed by fear? She didn't know. The lights flickered once above a cruel tease, then died again. The cafe remained cloaked in shadow. Anna pressed her back to the counter, heart pounding, the world spinning with noise and movement. and somewhere near the back she could still feel Adrian's presence, tall, steady, deliberate. Their eyes did not meet in the dark, but she felt it. A pull, a connection she didn't want. And, just before the segment ended, one thought crystallized in her mind. The storm outside was nothing. The real storm was here in this room, between these walls where truth and lies moved unseen through the dark. And it was only beginning. The cafe was chaos in the dark. Voices clashed, chairs scraped, the storm outside roared as if it had forced its way in. The glow of phones flickered wildly, unsteady lights catching fragments of faces, wide eyes, clenched jaws, frantic hands reaching for balance. Anna braced herself against the counter, trying to stay still amid the frenzy. But then came the crash. A man near the doorway slipped on the rain-slick floor. His arms flailed, striking a chair that toppled into another, a chain reaction of noise and panic. Someone screamed. Another stumbled backward, colliding into a table that shook violently. Cups and plates clattered, one teetering at the edge, before smashing to the ground. And, in that instant, Anna felt her footing slip. The world tilted. She gasped, reaching for the counter, but her fingers brushed empty air. The chaos swallowed her balance, pulling her toward the cascade of falling chairs. But before she hit the ground, a hand seized her wrist. Strong, steady, unyielding. She was pulled sharply, spun away from the collapse, and collided into something solid. Someone solid. Her breath caught. The storm seemed to hush for a moment, though it was only in her chest. Adrian. His arm braced around her, holding her upright, his body a wall between her and the chaos. For a heartbeat, time slowed. The glow of a nearby phone illuminated his face, briefly sharp lines, rain still clinging to his hair, from earlier eyes dark but intent. He was close, too close, and in the shadowed half-light she saw not the untouchable billionaire, but a man alive with urgency. Anna's pulse raced. She hated the warmth of his grip, hated the steadiness he offered, because for the briefest second it felt like safety. And that terrified her more than the fall. "Careful," he murmured, his voice low, barely audible over the storm and the chaos. The word struck her like a jolt. Careful, as if he had the right to caution her, as if she needed his protection. Her chest tightened with anger, drowning out the confusion. She pushed at him, breaking free of his hold. "I didn't ask you to touch me," she hissed. Her voice trembled, though, whether from fear, rage, or something else she couldn't tell. Adrian's expression shifted, a flicker of something pained, almost human, before the mask returned. He stepped back, giving her space, his silence louder than any defense. Around them, the chaos continued. Customers shouted, some demanding light, others fumbling for their belongings. The storm outside beat mercilessly against the glass, thunder cracking like the voice of judgment itself. And then from the corner of her vision, Anna saw it again. Burgundy. The silhouette, faint but unmistakable, slipping between the panicked crowd. A dress clinging to the dim light, a figure that moved with purpose where others stumbled. Her breath caught. She blinked, straining against the flicker of phone lights, but when she looked again, the space was empty. Gone, like smoke dispersing in wind. Anna's heart pounded harder. She hated herself for doubting her own eyes, hated the uncertainty gnawing at her. Had she really seen the woman, or was fear painting phantoms where there were none? But deep down she knew. The woman was here, watching, always watching. A loud crack startled the room. Another chair had fallen, splintering against the floor. A child cried out. Someone cursed loudly, phone swinging to capture the mess instead of offering comfort. Anna pressed her back against the counter again, forcing air into her lungs. Adrian stood a few feet away, now posture tall, steady even amid the frenzy. He looked toward her, once his gaze unreadable, then turned to the storm of people around him. Even in shadow, he commanded presence. Even in chaos, he did not bend. And that more than anything infuriated her. Because he had pulled her from danger, yes, but he had also pulled her into all of this. Then, as suddenly as it had vanished, the light returned. The lamps flickered, buzzed, then steadied, casting the cafe in its golden glow once more. The room froze for a moment, eyes blinking against the sudden brightness. Then came the exhale, nervous laughter, hurried voices, the rush to gather belongings. Customers muttered excuses, some leaving quickly, eager to escape the memory of darkness. Anna stood rigid, her breath still unsteady. Adrian straightened his jacket as though nothing had happened, though his sleeve was damp from the spill of a glass, his hair disheveled in a way no billionaires should be. Their eyes met briefly. Her glare was sharp, laced with fury. His gaze was steady, carrying something she refused to name. Neither spoke. When the last of the panicked crowd pushed through the door, Velour Café looked almost normal again. Tables stood crooked shards of glass littered the floor. Water spread in shallow pools, but the light was back, and the world pretended calm. Only Anna knew different. Only she carried the echo of his hand on her wrist, the weight of his arm steadying her, the haunting glimpse of burgundy moving in the dark. She turned away, busying herself with cleaning her motions, sharp, mechanical, anything to drown the storm inside her chest. At the back, Adrian sat down again, silent as ever, though his stillness spoke louder than words. The cafe had returned to its golden glow, but the shadows lingered unseen and unyielding. And Anna knew the real storm was not over. It was only shifting, waiting for its next strike. The golden lights had returned, but the cafe no longer felt golden. It felt broken. Tables leaned, crooked shards of glass glistened across the floor, and shallow pools of water spread like scars where rain had spilled in. The hum of conversation was gone, replaced with hurried mutters, anxious footsteps, and the sharp scrape of chairs being pushed back too quickly. Customers gathered their belongings with restless energy, some whispering excuses to no one in particular, others clutching their phones as though the chaos was something precious to carry home and share. The door opened and closed again and again, each chime sharper than the last, until only a handful remained. The cafe that once held warmth now felt hollow, stripped bare by shadows and fear. Anna moved, automatically, her hands busy, but her mind storming. She swept broken glass into a dustpan, wiped down counters already smudged with water, set chairs upright with more force than necessary. Her body worked. Her thoughts screamed, "This is my place, my refuge, my world." And now it's just another stage for his chaos. She slammed the dustpan into the bin, the sharp clatter echoing louder than she intended. Several remaining customers looked up startled, then quickly looked away. At the back, Adrian sat as though untouched by the mess around him. His posture was straight, his hands folded, his expression unreadable. But Anna had seen enough to know better. His suit was damp, his hair slightly disheveled, his stillness too deliberate, like a man holding himself together by sheer force of will. She hated that she noticed, hated that a part of her even cared. Finally, she could no longer hold back. She marched toward his table, her steps sharp, her voice low but edged with fury. "Do you see this?" she demanded, gesturing to the chaos around them. "Do you see what you've brought here?" Adrian's eyes lifted slowly, meeting hers without flinching. "This isn't me," he said evenly. Anna laughed bitterly, the sound too harsh in the quiet room. "Of course it isn't. It never is it? You sit there in silence while storms tear everything apart around you, and you expect the rest of us to clean it up." Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her hands tightening into fists. Adrian studied her for a moment. His gaze wasn't cold this time, nor mocking. It was heavy, weighted with something closer to resignation. "There are things I can't control," he said softly. "Things I can't escape, even when I want to." The words silenced her more than she expected. For a brief instant, her anger faltered, because beneath his calm she heard it, the note of weariness, the trace of truth. But she crushed the thought before it could take root. "Then don't bring it here," she snapped. "Don't bring it into my life, into this cafe, into—" She cut herself off, biting back the rest. Adrian's eyes searched hers as though he had heard the words anyway. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy as the storm that had just passed. A chair scraped loudly nearby, shattering the moment. A customer muttered something about leaving before something else happens and hurried out the door. Anna turned sharply, busying herself with wiping down another table, her back to him. Her motions were brisk, mechanical, each one a shield. But her mind betrayed her again. He sounded tired, not arrogant, not untouchable, just tired. She hated herself for thinking it. Adrian rose at last. The scrape of his chair against the floor was soft, deliberate. He adjusted his cufflinks, smoothed the front of his jacket, reclaimed the posture of a man untouchable. But when he passed by the counter, he paused. His voice was quiet, meant only for her. "You think I'd choose this," he said, "but some storms don't ask permission." Anna's breath caught, but she did not turn to face him. She gripped the cloth in her hand tighter, scrubbing harder at a spotless surface. By the time she looked up again, he was gone. The cafe door swung shut, the chime echoing in the hollow room. Anna stood still, her chest tight, her thoughts louder than the silence. She told herself she would never let him pull her in, that she would build her walls higher, keep her distance sharper. But somewhere deep inside, a crack had already formed, and through that crack, the storm seeped in. The night wrapped itself around the city, heavy and restless. Rain no longer fell in torrents, but a damp mist lingered, clinging to windows and streets like breath unwilling to fade. Anna stumbled into her apartment, exhausted in body, but restless in mind. She dropped her keys on the counter with a hollow clink and pressed her back to the door for a moment, eyes closed, breathing hard. She had survived the shift, the storm, the chaos, but survival did not mean peace. Her phone buzzed before she could even take off her damp shoes. The screen lit up with messages. "Anna, you're on live again. Girl, what's happening at your cafe? Tell me you saw this, you're trending." Her hands trembled as she scrolled. Link after link appeared. Clips cut from live streams, shaky angles of the cafe in darkness, customers screaming, phones glowing. And in frame there she was, tray in hand, face pale in the dim light, caught in the storm of whispers she had never asked for. One video had already racked up thousands of views. The comments scrolled beneath it, a blur of speculation and mockery. "The waitress again. She's always there. Coincidence? Doubt it. She looks scared, maybe she knows something. Bet she's in on it." Anna's stomach twisted. She threw the phone onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. She had always guarded her privacy. Her world was small, ordinary, safe. And now strangers typed theories about her life as though it belonged to them, dissecting her expressions, inventing roles she had never chosen. Her chest heaved with anger, but beneath it was something worse, fear. If the videos kept spreading, if her name surfaced, if her face was tied too closely to his, what would happen then? She curled up on the couch blanket, pulled tight, trying to shrink from a world that felt too large, too invasive. But the phone buzzed again. Always again. Across the city, light burned in the upper floors of a glass tower. Adrian sat in his office, the skyline stretching endlessly behind him. The city's lights glimmered like jewels scattered across velvet, but he did not look at them. His attention was fixed on the tablet in his hand, the glow reflecting against his sharp features. Another clip. Another article. Headlines scrolled across the screen. Blackwood scandal deepens mystery woman demands answers. Velour Café chaos. Eyewitness footage goes viral. And then the one that made his breath hitch. Who is the waitress always beside him? The article froze on an image Anna blurred in motion, her face half illuminated by a phone's glow, fear written across her features. Adrian's jaw tightened. His hand hovered over the screen, fingers brushing against her image as though to erase it. He had seen it before, collateral damage. People caught in storms, not of their making, their lives unraveled by proximity. He had sworn not to let it happen again. And yet here she was. He closed the article abruptly, setting the tablet down with more force than he intended. The glass of whiskey at his side trembled, liquid rippling in the dim light. Silence filled the office. Too large, too polished, too empty. Adrian leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. The words of the woman in burgundy echoed in his mind. Debts have a way of resurfacing. And Anna's voice sharper still. People believe what they see, and what they see is a man who carries scandal like a shadow. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of both. Not just as accusations, but as truths clawing their way too close. Anna lay awake on her couch, staring at the ceiling. The glow of her phone pulsed faintly from the coffee table, each vibration a reminder she could not escape. She thought of his eyes in the darkness, steady, unreadable, catching hers even as chaos swirled around them. She hated that the memory lingered. Why couldn't she let it go? Why did his silence haunt her more than the screams? She turned onto her side, pulling the blanket tighter, but no matter how she wrapped herself, she could not keep the storm out. In his tower, Adrian poured another drink, but did not touch it. His reflection in the window stared back at him, fractured by streaks of rain. He saw not just himself, but her woven into the storm he could no longer contain. And, though he would never admit it aloud, a question gnawed at him, relentless. Had his silence already cost her more than he could repay? 2 lives, 2 worlds, one in a modest apartment glowing warm with lamplight, the other in a cold office high above the city. Both sat in silence. Both stared at screens that condemned them. Both felt the noose of fate tightening, and neither could sleep. Morning arrived without promise. The sky was pale and heavy clouds stretched thin like worn linen, the kind that carried no light, only fatigue. The storm had passed, yet its residue clung to the city-damp streets, dripping eaves, the hush of a world still unsettled. Anna stirred awake on her couch, the blanket tangled around her. Her phone buzzed against the coffee table, insistent, relentless. She rubbed her eyes, groaning, her body aching from a night of fractured sleep. When she finally reached for the phone, she wished she hadn't. Headlines everywhere. The waitress in the Blackwood scandal. Who is she? Velour Café's mystery witness. Identified from coffee to controversy. The woman always at his side. Her chest tightened as she scrolled. Image after image cut from live streams zoomed in from grainy videos. Her face half-turned, blurred at the edges, but still hers. Her uniform, her tray, the wide-eyed look she hadn't known she wore. Each photo carried captions, speculations, comments. She looks nervous, definitely knows something. Maybe she's the reason he keeps coming back. She doesn't look innocent to me. Anna's throat closed. She set the phone down as though it burned her breath, coming fast, shallow. She stumbled into the kitchen, filling a glass with water, her hands trembling. She drank deeply, but it did nothing to steady her. Her sanctuary, her life of quiet anonymity, was gone, torn away by cameras, by rumors, by proximity to a man she neither trusted nor wanted. And yet she could not forget the look in his eyes, the steady weight in the dark, the flicker of something almost human beneath the mask. She shook her head violently. No, she would not let herself pity him, not when his presence had stolen hers. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a coworker. Anna, your name's in one of the articles. Be careful. Her blood ran cold. She opened the link with shaking hands. There it was. Waitress identified. Local sources claimed to know the cafe employee at center of scandal. Though her name wasn't printed outright, it hovered dangerously close. Details about the cafe, hints about staff speculation disguised as reporting. It was only a matter of time before the thin veil fell completely. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian sat in his office once more. The skyline was muted under the pale sky, the glass of the tower reflecting a world tired of storms. He held the morning paper in one hand, though it was redundant. He had already seen the digital headlines, the endless feed of noise. And there she was. Not him, not the woman in burgundy, not the empire, not the debts. Her, the waitress. The articles had framed her face beside his, as though fate had tied their images together, their lives knotted by scandal. Adrian's jaw tightened, the paper crumpling slightly in his grip. He wanted to call, to text, to explain, to promise protection, to offer something he had never offered anyone. But he didn't, because his silence was all he had left, and because silence for him had always been safer. He set the paper down slowly, his eyes closing for a moment, as the city moved relentlessly below. Anna sat at her small kitchen table, the glass of water untouched, her phone glowing like a beacon she couldn't turn off. She scrolled once more, though she hated herself for it. More headlines, more speculation. Her face everywhere, her life dissected by strangers. She pressed the phone flat against the table, her hand trembling. Her chest ached with the question that refused to leave. Could she escape? Could she claw her way back to the quiet life she had once lived? Or had the storm already claimed her, sweeping her into a world where secrets were currency and silence was never enough? Outside, the city bustled as though nothing had changed. Cars passed, pedestrians hurried, the rhythm of ordinary life continued. But inside that small apartment, Anna sat frozen, her eyes fixed on the glow of headlines that bore her face. And she knew deep in her bones that this was not the end. It was the beginning.